Hi, this is Braden Holtby.
Hi, this is Brian Burke.
This is Kelly Rudy.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carly Agro from Sportsnet Central.
I am Jason Greger.
Hi, this is Scott Hartnell.
This is Quick Dick McDick.
Hey, it's Ron McLean, Hockey Night in Canada and Rogers Hometown Hockey, and welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast.
Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. Back at her again. Happy Monday, holiday Monday here in Canada. Before we get on to today's guest, let's hear from our sponsors. Tracy Klotz, Titus Tools is a locally owned business which Tracy formed in 1997. He has 40 years experience in the oil industry, and under Tracy's direction, Titus has remained loyal to the Lloydminster and surrounding community, continuing to invest in local charities and fundraisers. I've personally seen his passion when it comes to our local talent, and I've mentioned the last couple episodes, Andrew Mavridis, an amateur MMA fighter, and Brandy Hofer, the very talented artist from town, and he's supported both of those people in their endeavors. And, of course, the road trip he hopped on as soon as he found out about it. So shout out to Tracy and his team over at Titus Tools. If you're interested in finding anything more out about them, head to TitusTools.com. Foremost, they offer smooth-walled grain bins, hopper bottoms, and fuel tanks. They're in stock and manufactured locally. They want to ensure that you know they are constructed of the highest quality and engineered for a long life. Delivery is free within 300 kilometers of Lloydminster. You can buy at any of their co-op locations, Lloydminster, Lashburn, or Neilburg. For more information, you can check them out at their website, foremost.ca. Baker Hughes Upstream Chemicals. When you need improved performance or productivity, your solution often exists in the proper application of specialty chemicals. We offer multiple chemical lines to improve performance, use, and production. Not to mention we have the best group of guys around. A shout out to all the boys that I work with. We'll go above and beyond to ensure you get what you need and the answers you're looking for. For all your oil field chemical needs, look to Baker Hughes. If you're heading into any of these businesses, make sure you let them know you heard about them on the podcast. If you're interested in advertising on the show, visit SeanNewmanPodcast.com. In the top right corner, hit the contact button and send me your information. We got lots of different options, and I want to find something that can work for the both of us. Now, let's get on to our T-Bar 1 tale of the tape. Originally from Rankin Inlet, Nunavut, he was selected by the Brandon Wheat Kings in the 1998 Dub Draft and would play for the Wheat Kings from 1999 to 2003. In 2001, he was drafted 98th overall by the Nashville Predators, becoming the first Inuk to play in the NHL. He spent 8 years with the Nashville Predators. Following this, he would play with the Detroit Red Wings, New Jersey Devils, and finally the Chicago Blackhawks. Over his career, he's played 717 games, 64 goals, 96 assists, 1,008 penalty minutes. We should note that Jordin lost his brother, Terrence, to suicide in 2002, and later while playing in the NHL would enter in the NHL's substance abuse program in 2010. Since entering, he has been sober and created Team Tootoo Foundation, which raises awareness for suicide prevention and anti-bullying programs for youth at risk. I'm talking about Jordin Tootoo. So buckle up. Here we go.
This is Jordin Tootoo. Welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast. Today I'm joined by Jordin Tootoo. So thank you, sir, for letting me come see your place here in Kelowna. It's beautiful, and thanks for sitting down and making some time for me.
My pleasure, Sean. It's always good to do these things and share my story.
Well, I was. Everybody knows Spit Chicklets, right? So the wife is from Minneapolis, and she has no idea about hockey. Like before she met me, she's a volleyball player. I love her to bits. And I said, I had just confirmed Jordin Tootoo. And she goes, okay, who's that? And I'm like, I'm sure he's been on Spit Chicklets. I'm like, got to think about it, find you, put it on. And so then she learns more about the guys I'm interviewing than probably anyone else, because I'm just pretty much like anybody else. I like to divulge. I like to read your book. I like to know some things before I walk in and not just ask dumb questions, which I'll probably have a few of those today. And she's learned a ton about hockey. And so you're saying you've done a couple of these, and Spit and Chicklets you were awesome on. So I mean, I don't know if you're going to do another one of those anytime soon, but
It's put out in the air. A lot of people want to hear more stories, I guess. I don't know. I guess I'm just somewhat of a good storyteller, but hey, when it's real life shit, you just go with the flow, I guess. That's how I grew up in Nunavut, right? You just go with the flow on a daily basis, and here we are in Kelowna. Let's share some stories.
Yeah, cool. Well, let's talk about growing up. Let's talk about up north and what life is like up there. I come from small town Saskatchewan, so we have our own way of life. But when you burst onto the scene back in the World Juniors, at least that's for me when I first learned of you, and kind of heard parts of your story, as all Canadians probably have.
Yep.
What was life growing up there?
Well, I mean, I'm sure you can relate to some of the small town life. Growing up in Rankin Inlet, Nunavut, there's about 1,800 people. Fly in, fly out only community. So, yeah, pretty isolated and pretty damn cold.
How cold?
I mean, like the average winter temperatures were minus 40 without wind chill. But yet, we were out playing street hockey under the northern lights. It's darkness probably 20 hours a day in the winter, December, January, February. So it was pretty awesome actually growing up as a young kid, and you know how it is. You can be a kid, right, in these small communities and not worry about the lifestyle that is put out there in big cities, right? Like as a young kid, I was able to walk the streets with my hockey stick, and everybody knows everybody, so pretty friendly. But once those street hockey games would happen amongst us young kids,
they don't get intense, do they?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a few tilts in my day out on the gravel roads there, and but yeah, pretty simple life. The materialistic shit doesn't matter. We easy living. You just go with the flow. Like I said, we drove quads in the summertime, skidoos in the wintertime. I guess one of the biggest things was for us is the hunting and fishing was a huge part of our culture, and being out on the land, roaming out on the land. It's about survival mode out there. We hunt for our food. My father was born and raised out there, so having his guidance growing up as a kid into my teenage years and adulthood, I've have tremendous respect for my father for teaching me life skills, right? The simple things matter. I'll share a little story here. I brought up a film crew up there, and we were out on the land, about a 2-hour quad ride inland. It was middle of July, I believe, and the mosquitoes were fucking nasty. Like
what's nasty mosquitoes like?
Like black clouds. It was bad. I mean, but you get immune to it, right? Growing up there, and anyways, so I had this film crew, and my father was saying, "Okay, Jordin, you see, there's a little esker a couple miles down there. Look in the binoculars. I want you to take the film crew and just hide behind the esker." And I was, I don't know, 16, 17 years old. And so I loaded up everyone on their quads, and we drove the quad for about 30 minutes to this location. And I'm like, "Okay, guys, set up your cameras. We'll do an interview here, whatever." And about 20 minutes later, we are all sitting on the tundra. Remember, we don't have any trees where I come from, so you can see for miles. So we were just sitting there, and I don't know if you ever watched the movie Braveheart, but when the two herds are coming together, the ground starts to rumble.
Yeah.
So we were sitting there, and you just kind of have this funny feeling. Wow, like what's that rumbling? So I pop up my head over the little esker, or I guess what we would call a mountain up in Nunavut. So I peeked my head over, and there's like 150,000 caribou coming right towards us. So it was an unbelievable. It's all on camera. It was like the land was moving, like because the caribou are migrating. And so they're coming right towards us. That was the first time I ever experienced something like that. And the camera crew, they got all their cameras and they're freaking out like, oh my God, we're going to get trampled. I'm like, hey guys, just fucking calm down. Everything's going to be all good here. I got a case of bullets. We're all good. Like, their caribou aren't going to attack us, right? When they're migrating, they just want to keep moving from the mosquitoes, basically. And so, I don't know, they come within about 30 feet from us. And I poke my head up, and the camera guy's like, oh my God, I got a $100,000 camera unit here. Like, we're going to get trampled and I'm going to get fired. And I'm like, hey, buddy, like, chill the fuck out. It's all good. So anyways, they stop. And it was like literally like the movie in Braveheart, when they all stop in one big line. And so I'm like, okay. So I load up my rifle and I start firing away. And next thing you know, the herds they're going everywhere. They're scattering. And I run out of bullets. And, I caught 4 or 5 caribou or whatever, enough to feed the whole gang for a month or so. And so about an hour later, my dad comes up and I'm skinning 1 caribou. My dad's got a couple more. By the time I'm done mine, my dad's already done fucking 4 caribou, so the wily old veteran knows what to do with his eyes closed. But anyways, halfway through, I'm cutting my caribou up. My dad looks over at me and he starts giving me shit. I'm like, dude, I just caught like 5 or 6 caribou here. He's like, what the hell are you doing? You should have just let them walk right past you guys. Cause what they would have done when they're migrating, they'll just walk and then just kind of walk around you. I'm like, Dad, I fucking know what, I've never experienced this. And so he gives me shit about that. And then he's like, how many bullets do you have left? I'm like, nothing. He's like, yeah, he starts giving it to me. You fucking idiot. What if a pack of wolves come or a polar bear? You're screwed, I'm like, well, they got 5 carcasses here to chew on. But, my father being out on the land, it's safety first and looking after you. You respect the land will respect you. And, it was a life lesson that, if you have a case of bullets, you only need 1 bullet to kill 1 animal. It's about savoring, what you have and making sure that, you don't overuse the materials that you have, because you never know what can happen in the future, right? Like, it didn't even cross my mind that what if a pack of wolves came around? I would have been dead. We would have been dead, right? Like, I got no ammo to shoot or a polar bear to shoot at. And, it was at that moment where I was like, wow, because as a young teenager, a lot of kids these days think, everything's replaceable. You can get more, and there's always more of it. But my dad's mentality is, you use what you only need to use, and, because you don't know what the future holds, right? So it was a pretty neat experience overall. But yeah, that's just one of my many stories. We can talk for hours here.
We certainly can. I've had many a different, enjoy interviewing people who are well older than me that have experienced those days when you didn't have a lot. And coming from a farming background on the prairies, you don't have to go far to talk to people who, didn't have running water, didn't have power, didn't have all these different
materialistic shit.
Well, and you talk about like, they talk about taking a bath, for instance, or just water in general, right? And not having running water. So you got to go and do it all yourself. And then bring it all, haul it up. Well, you doing that 12 times so 12 people can have baths, or you all just getting in the same bloody tub after, one after another and whatever. And today, even I'm like, kind of like clean water though, right?
Yeah.
And as we get further away from that, at least down here, and maybe even up there for all I know, it just gets harder to remember those days because we're further and further away from every day.
Totally. And, that's what's great about, throughout my whole professional career, playing in the NHL and all that, being all over the world. It's a pretty humbling experience to go back to where you grew up and not take things for granted. Right. When you grow up in a small community, a lot of us take things for granted, the little things. Right. And for me, it was every off season, I always made sure that I got home for a few weeks to just get out on the land and to get away from the hustle and bustle of, the world. And I think a lot of small town individuals can relate that way, right? I was always told by my parents that no matter where you go in life, home's always going to be home. If you leave home at a young age to go experience life, different cultures, do that. It gives us opportunity to see what else is out there.
Yeah, some perspective.
Rather than kind of living in this bubble where, especially a lot of indigenous kids, growing up on reserves and really remote communities. I've always felt that I was an outsider coming south, right? Because I grew up in a community where everyone knows everyone. Everyone's comfortable with what they have and they make the best of it, right? And when you leave home, for me, my experience was pretty tough. I faced a lot of racism at 14, 15 years old. I didn't quite understand what racism was back then because I never experienced it. But that being said, it gives you a different perspective on the way you see things. But at the end of the day, my heart and soul will forever be tied to where I grew up. And I'm sure it is with you, with people who grow up in Hillmont, Saskatchewan.
Shout out to Hillmont.
Hillmont. I mean, my good buddy and a mentor of mine, I'm sure a lot of you guys know in Hillmont, Mr. Wade Redden. I look up to the guy since I was playing in my Brandon Wheat King days. Reds played there. I'm sure all you guys know, but just tremendous people come from small towns. Very humbled and kind people, and you take your experiences and you teach them to people who grow up in very urban areas, right? That think they know everything and that life should be a certain way, but we as small town community members, we see things from a different perspective, and it actually shows people through, I'm sure a lot of people experienced through this whole pandemic of COVID, that really you don't need a lot to survive, right? To make it out there, as long as you're comfortable and content with what you have, and you make the best of it and realize that when you put things into perspective, family matters. Just having a positive outlook on life and rather than dwelling on the negativity that, a lot of people experience, I didn't come from a lot, but I knew deep down inside that I was gonna make the best of my life, right? We all know that life is too short. And for a lot of Indigenous people, I've experienced it firsthand. It's your average Canadian is uneducated about the history. All people read is what's put in the newspaper and the persona that when people see Indigenous people on the streets is to stay away from them. I don't want to get into any political shit here, but hey, we're all human beings. Let's treat each other equally, right? We all fight a fight nobody knows about. Until we connect with each other, until we start communicating, then we learn. You learn by listening. You don't learn by talking. So for me, I'm one of those individuals who like to observe and to listen. If people ask me questions, I'll talk, but I'm not going to be the first one to, start blabbing on about whatever. But that's part of, growing up in small towns, right? We observe, we learn by watching. I grew up, I wasn't a book smart kind of student, right? I learned our culture. We learned by watching. I learned watching my father. He's a mechanic. He's a welder. He's a carpenter, kind of jack of all trades. But being out on the land is where I, learned life skills through my father's teachings. And I mean, I'm sure it's the same in the farming world, growing up in remote communities in Saskatchewan. The kids watch their fathers, their grandfathers, and, how to do certain things. And, that's the best way to learn. And the other thing is not being afraid of failure. That's creates mental toughness. Because in order to learn and to move forward, sometimes you got to take 2 steps back, and those failures grow you as an individual. I mean, I guarantee you every professional athlete out there has experienced more failure than success. I'm sure Wade, Corey Cross, these guys who come from small communities, we had to fight and earn what was given to us. In today's world, I've seen it, young athletes, young career individuals, whatever career they choose to do, they expect respect. They demand respect. No, you go out there and you earn it by working your ass off, putting one foot in front of the other, and sometimes you're going to hit roadblocks, but that's okay. That builds character. And for me, I'm only 5'8" and 190 pounds. And a lot of people say, oh, how do you do it? Well, I give a lot of credit to growing up in the Arctic, because we had to, it was survival mode every day, minus 40, minus 50, 60, battling, harsh weather conditions to survive. That builds character. Shit like that you can't buy.
Well, that's experience.
Exactly. And that's what life's all about. Experiences, right? Get out there and experience as much as you can. Learn about different cultures, different traditions. Be a lending hand to others.
The racism one, you say we don't want to get political. I'm not too worried about it. As by now, my listeners know I'm willing to venture into anywhere because that's the only way you learn. And so the racism one I'm curious about. So I married an American, all right, from Minneapolis. And so she challenges me all the time, which is uncomfortable, which I'm okay with. But
Don't all wives do that?
yes, they do. Growing up, I must have lived in a I don't know, man, a box, because great parents can't speak. Well, they're on the trip, They told Dad what I was doing. I'll drive, right? Just drives and away we go. And and then Mom hops in and they just tour me around and whatever. And maybe I blocked it out, but I never saw it. But then I read your book, and you talk about it 14, I think, 13, 14.
14.
And then I was reading Wayne Gretzky's book. And please, listeners, don't get any thoughts here. I don't got Wayne coming on just yet. But in Wayne's, he talked about being right around the same age and getting absolutely, wasn't racism, but getting absolutely yelled at by parents because he was hogging the puck and like scoring too many goals and stuff. And you're going like, how the heck does that make any sense? Like, parents are supposed to be, I don't know,
happy for the kid.
That's right. Mature. I mean, they're supposed to be well versed in things, right?
Yep.
And yet, I read your account. I had Theo on and read some of the stuff that Theo talked about, and I'm like, holy man, like the longer I go, the more I go, man, I either got the luckiest childhood, and I played hockey partway across the world, or my blinders have been on since the very beginning, and I just didn't ever entertain what was going on or something. I don't know. But reading your account, I went, like, racism at 14? Like, it was that bad?
Yeah. I mean, that's, throughout my journey in this hockey world and in life in general, a lot of it is being uneducated about your surroundings. And for me, being, I guess, the outsider in a predominantly white community, there is, that those walls are up, right? But it's the history prior to what went on, in our grandparents' era that has been passed down into their children, and then grandchildren and whatnot. And so the first time I ever experienced racism was actually when I was playing in a hockey tournament in Edmonton, Alberta. And all these racial slurs were being thrown at me, and I was 14 years old. I didn't ever hear these words before, but my coaches and parents in the stands that were on my team were relaying the message to me. People are saying bad words to you, and so I started to second guess my culture and my traditions. Like, how am I going to make it in this hockey world if I don't fit in? Well, then it got to the point where I had to start standing up for myself. And, if any racial taunts were thrown at me, it was go time. I wasn't going to take no shit from nobody. And
I don't think you took shit from anybody.
But that led into my WHL career, into my professional career. I mean, it happened in the NHL. We're all professionals here. And, when I got players from other teams throwing racial taunts at me about, my heritage and my background, prior to sobering up in 2010, I was an angry individual. And, I'd go on rampages on the ice. If a player from the opposing team said something to me, it was, I didn't give a shit. I was ripping your head off.
When you say something, what were some of the things? Once again, I just come at it from a naive, like.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of different terms, like for me, go back to where you belong, the little engine that could, like little things. Oh, you're redskin and all, although I'm not Indian, I'm Inuk. So a lot of these racial terms that were said towards me were directed to the Indian culture, right? The Native American Indian culture. And so, like I didn't hear these terms before. But prior to sobering up in 2010, like I said, I was an angry individual, and any racial slurs that were directed towards me, like I said, it was
go time.
It was go time, and I didn't give a shit about feelings. And then when I sobered up and started realizing that, and having clarity and being comfortable and content in my own skin, that I can't control what other people say or do towards me. All I know is I can go to bed at night with ease because I have clarity. I can guarantee you individuals who go down that road are dealing with personal issues that they need to figure out, right? And that's up to that individual to look themselves in the mirror and say, am I being the best professional I can every day? I mean, God, you're a role model for thousands of kids that look up to us, right? What kind of
example are you
what
setting?
Kind of example are you setting for these kids? And so, more often than not, in my sobriety and playing another 8 years in the NHL, I started realizing that, wow, we all fight a fight no one knows about until we communicate and educate ourselves. I mean, no individual is going to change another individual unless they're willing to change themselves, right? It comes down to that. And, I'm not going to put anyone on the spotlight here, but, there's a few players, after they, I get it. The emotions run high during hockey games. You've experienced it. Like, shit happens, right? But there's a line that is never to be crossed, and that's, personal issues or family matters. Yeah. On the ice. Anything else, hey, whatever. It's
Believe
chirps.
me, there's some refs out there listening to this. They always laugh because I have had to apologize to many a ref because when I get heated, I've been booted for a game for calling a guy a dumb, whatever happens, right?
Yeah, it's heat of the moment, and
it's a competitive game.
Absolutely, and when those terms were said towards me, I'd look at that individual straight in the fucking eyes and say, "Are you okay? Like, how's your home life? What's going on? And you could see their minds start rolling, like, holy shit, like, And after games, I had a number of players want to come and apologize. This is what I'm talking about. I can go to bed every night at ease. I'm sure those individuals for a long time couldn't get over what they said when they were trying to go to sleep, right? And so, for me, it was always to be proud of where I come from and who I am, and to help others understand, who we are as people, as Aboriginal people, or, whatever culture you come from. Be open, be honest, and just, welcome different cultures into your circle, because it's a learning curve for all of us.
Well, you go back to what you initially said about being in bubbles. And if you just go experience somebody else's bubble, it makes your bubble bigger and you can understand where everyone's coming from. And there's a lot of different bubbles out there. There isn't just 2 or 3.
No, and that's it, right? Like, just being willing and being willing to learn. That's basically, even as adults, we're learning every day. If you want to put yourself in that situation, right? Like, who wants to live in a I guess, a bubble, right? I mean,
There are lots of people that want to live in a bubble. That's the crazy thing. Me and you sit here and talk like this. I guarantee there's, like, you see it all the time. There's people that want to just.
It's like my family up in Nunavut, right? I mean, when you're comfortable and content with what you have, that's fantastic, because, I always, playing professional hockey, I'm just going to veer off to the left a little bit here. A lot of us make a lot of money, and, you start pouring that extra money you have into materialistic things, and you want to make sure your family's happy and whatnot. And I was pretty fortunate to have a family that, understood that, it's not all about the money. My father, the guy would never ask for a dime if he had to. And that's one thing that would want to help my father more. Dad, like, what do you need? Because my dad's he's a true hunter. He wants to be out on the land and basically live out on the land. Jordin, I don't need nothing, like nothing. But I knew deep down, to get out on the land, you need gas. To feed the family, you need ammunition. And that's one thing throughout my whole NHL career. I always made sure my dad was stocked with gas and ammunition.
And bullets.
Yes. So, and we look after our shit, right? Small town people look after what, you savor those, whether it's a combine or a farm truck, right? Those things, you look after it, right? And like, it's just not you don't have the mindset of, I'll just get a new one, if this breaks down.
Can only afford one.
Yeah. Like,
couldn't afford the one you had.
Yeah. So, I mean,
do you ever take, I'm assuming you get asked all the time about, the culture change from going from up north to coming down here. And the funny thing is, then I go down to the States and they think here is up here, right? So it's kind of like, it's all relative. But do you ever take anybody from further down south,
yes.
up north?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what do they got to say about that?
They're just like, they don't know what to think. Scotty Gomez played in the NHL for a lot of years, and I happened to play with him when I was in New Jersey. And Gomer is he's from Alaska, so kind of grew up in the country, and all the hunting and fishing, and so after my first year in Jersey, Gomer called me. He's like, "Hey, when are you going home? I want to come up there with you." So next thing you know it, Gomer is up in Rankin with two of his buddies from New York City. Okay, you're living in Manhattan. These two guys.
That'd probably be the most extreme, wouldn't it? New York City
to bumfuck nowhere. So within basically a 24-hour span, they flew from New York to my hometown up in Rankin Inlet, Nunavut. And my father and I and a couple buddies, this was in the springtime, so end of April. So weather was still a little chilly, minus 20, minus 15. We packed up our sleds, got everything ready. My sister is a seamstress, so she made them parkas and wind pants and all that. And we drove for 3 hours on the Skidoo. My dad took us to one of his cabins. And, Gomer was just like, he's never experienced stuff like that, right? We don't have any trees where we come from. It's tundra. And then you got these two New Yorkers. We were sitting in the cabin and they were looking around and they were saying, "Where the hell am I?" going from New York City to just a little 250 square foot cabin in the middle of nowhere. And, and to them, they just, that quietness of just being still and listening to nature and, the wind, they've never experienced that. And, it was,
you wonder if you changed their lives.
I guarantee you they still talk about that experience
Well, I
to
have
this
to.
day. I mean, going out hunting for caribou, ice fishing, wolverine hunting, wolf hunting, all within 4 days. They couldn't believe it. They never knew this kind of shit existed, right? And so those are moments where, life memories happen, and showing our culture and our way of life to other people is something I totally enjoy. I got pictures, videos of these guys just like they were speechless, right? Like, going to bed at night with 6 humans in a 250 square foot cabin.
Sounds amazing.
The one guy is saying, okay, where do I take a shit? I'm like, go find a bigger rock to hide behind and take a squat, buddy. The other guy is saying, oh, where can I have a shower? I'm like, fuck, grab some snow and scrub yourself down, So those things, they've never experienced that. So it was pretty cool.
If you had like a GoPro or a camera sitting there to watch your expression, that'd probably be a similar expression to small Saskatchewan boy, maybe even yourself, going and hitting New York City. Because if you've been, New York City is I like to think of myself as a guy who can't get lost, right? Like, I kind of know my directions, and there's a landmark, walk towards that. I don't walk. And New York City, with all the skyscrapers and all that, you can't see nothing.
No.
It is the most confusing city in the world, and I've been lost there trying because I'm a like to walk.
Yeah.
I'll go for a walk.
Yeah.
It's a strange place.
It was funny in 2003 when I made the Nashville Predators. One of our first road trips was to New York, and at that time, my roommate was Jim McKenzie.
Okay,
the big old tough guy. The guy took me under his wing, and I remember Macker saying, Toots, let's go grab a coffee in Times Square. I'm like, sure, let's go. I'm a people watcher. Well, next thing you know it, there's a million people around and I can't find Macker, and about half an hour later, I see this big old bison head walking around, Jim McKenzie. And I'm sitting there and I could just see him like, he's perching on himself up on like garbage cans to try and find me. And next thing you know, he's like, Toots, he's yelling, Toots, where are you? Are you out there? And it's funny because, I've never been around, thousands of people in a congested area like that. It kind of freaked me out. I was just like, wow, like I can't handle this. Anyways, we go back up to the hotel and I open up the blinds. It's like 11 o'clock at night. I open up the blinds and I'm like blinded by all these lights. I thought it was like still daytime. Well, it's all the lights in Times Square. Everything was just lit right up, and I was just, wow. Like, for a small town boy walking around New York City, it was, I'm sure it was the same with the guys coming from New York to Nunavut.
Yeah, vice versa, right?
Yeah.
Absolute. That is like culture shock. It isn't even remotely close. It's just.
Yeah. And that's another thing when people kind of who grow up in small communities, right? You know everything you need to know to survive. When you leave your community and you're kind of outside of your element, especially for a lot of young athletes who have to leave their community don't last very long because they're so comfortable and content with the lifestyle that they have lived all their lives in these remote communities. So what happens is a lot of, very talented athletes that come from indigenous communities end up leaving the city life to go back home rather than sticking it out and pursuing their dreams of whatever they want to do. I can understand because I can relate. I was one of those kids who left home at 14, and 2 weeks in, I was like, get me the hell out of this city. I can't handle all these people, all these high rises and whatnot. But it was my late brother, Terrence, who, just kept me on the right path. Just stick it out, Jordin. Home's always going to be home. Just stick with it. And every day for probably 2 years of my first time leaving home, I battled through a lot of those things. And for a lot of young athletes, right, it's or whatever profession that individual chooses to do, tradesman, whatever, the first few months are probably the toughest when you first leave your community. But it's up to you to make that a priority to just stick with it one day at a time, because eventually it's going to get better, right? There's no end date to when things get better, but I've learned that if you just take life one day at a time, and just be your own person, just be you, right? Things will get better. And God, I never imagined at 14 years old I was going to play in the NHL at 20. I just worked my ass off every day and earned everything that was put in front of me. And that's what it's all about, earning your respect.
I bet if you took a poll of hockey players, I bet it's over 90% in the first 2 weeks of moving away from wherever they're at, have that phone call where they make to somebody, because I certainly had it. I was out in Dryden, Ontario, and I had a lovely billet family. Couldn't ask for a better family. Shout out to the Lanes. Like 3 years of them. They were fantastic. They became my second home. And I still wanted to go home. I had to call and talk to my oldest brother. And he talked me off the ledge of staying out there. And you're right. It gets better.
Yep.
I found it interesting in your book, you and Terrence would send faxes to each other. I thought that was great.
You find a way to make things better, right? And that was our way of connecting with each other. Back in the mid-90s, right? There were no cell phones or internet or whatever. And making long-distance phone calls for hours on end
expensive.
Was very expensive. So, hey, we had fax machines, so we would write conversations on piece of paper, fax it over. I would wait for his. Thousands of pages of conversations with my brother, and those were moments where it kept me on the right path, right? But ultimately, it's up to that individual to make a choice. Right? Life's all about choices. There's going to be consequences to some of the choices that you make, but that's what, that's how you mature as an individual. Some of the choices that I made in life were, could have been devastating. Could have ended my hockey career. Many other factors. But I owned up to them, and only that individual is going to be able to, when you look yourself in the mirror, you're the only person that's going to, change for the better. We all have a dark side to us. And I get it. I lived in darkness for 20 years, right? Substance abuse, bad decision making, but I owned up to it. And
why could it, to hop in on that? You go to substance abuse, whatever it's called, down south at the canyon, and for a lot of guys, they relapse a lot and then eventually work their way out of it, or maybe never. What was it about the first time for you that just was like, I'm done?
Yeah, well, every individual is different, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it was out of respect of myself, but I understood that I can change a lot of people's lives by stopping one cycle and starting a new cycle, not only for myself, but for my family. You got to want it, because no one's gonna do it for you, right? For me, relapse happens to a lot of individuals because they are so comfortable and content with the life that they were living, and now you go to the other side where the fear of the unknown, the fear of being sober, they don't know what that is, what that kind of life is, because they've perfected the life using substances, and that made them happy. Well, deep down, does it really make that individual happy? No. It's about being resilient. It's about having fortitude, in changing your life, because it's, for me, I knew that if I didn't stop doing what I was doing, using alcohol to suppress my feelings, that I would be the next victim. My brother, Terrence, we never ever talked about our feelings. We never talked about real life shit. The way we grew up in a dysfunctional family, we use alcohol to kind of forget about everything that was going on at home. But I knew deep down inside that if I didn't stop using, my hockey career would have been done. I did it to raise to keep my brother's legacy on, and to show people that, it doesn't matter where you come from, what kind of success you have, whether you're a professional athlete, a multi-million-dollar business owner, substances don't judge. And a lot of people early in my career would constantly say, "Oh, Jordin, you're so lucky. You're living the life of a NHLer. You're so lucky." But deep down inside, I was hurting. And for me, there came many times where I didn't see light at the end of the tunnel, and I thought, I had suicidal thoughts, after my brother passed away. And it just came to the point where, you know what? I got to do it for me first and foremost. Secondly, to stop one cycle and start a new cycle for my family, and be a role model for the Indigenous community, to show them that, hey, if I can do it, you can do it too. But that being said, you got to put in the work. Life doesn't get any easier when you decide to put down whatever substance that you choose and think, okay, I'm going to stop today. Life's going to be way better tomorrow and so on. No, it actually gets fucking harder, right? 2 years into sobriety, man, like I wake up every day and be like, fuck, why are people testing me every day? That I felt like that, right? But it was those inner demons that were taking me down that path. It was probably 3-4 years into sobriety where I started to realize that, sharing my story and actually telling the truth and putting pen to paper to go through my life story and to get weight lifted off my shoulders. Probably for 2 years, I didn't realize how many people that I hurt, in whether it was in the hockey community, family, fans, right? When I was out partying, I might have spilt a beer on somebody. These people were coming up to me, hey, remember you spilt a beer on me or whatever. And, for me, it was a time to tell them that I'm sorry, and it was weight off my shoulder. Just imagine 2 years like of those constant stories of how many people I affected. And that's what I was talking about. Like every day was like a test, people want to see me fall off the wagon, but I knew deep down inside that when I put my last drink down, I knew I was done. And, I couldn't have asked for a better gift to be put in front of me to sober up. Mr. David Poyle, the general manager of the Nashville Predators, my coach Barry Trotz, Brent Peterson. These guys cared about Jordin Tootoo, the person, not Jordin Tootoo, the hockey player. And still to this day, and Mr. Kelly McCrimmon, who was my general manager through my Brandon Wheat King days. These guys believed in me. Kelly McCrimmon, God, I actually had a chat with him yesterday. And he's been a mentor of mine since my junior days. Although we butted heads a lot, I was called into his office many a times for my off-ice actions, antics, whatever you call it. But, our relationship now is stronger than it's ever been because, as a young kid, you don't realize how much someone cares about you until you figure your own life out and look back and reminisce and talk about your experiences. Kelly McCrimmon, to be honest, was probably the one who gave me the opportunity to have a career like I did. And, and for Barry Trotz and David Poyle to see that, I was fighting a fight that the outside world didn't know about. It gave me an opportunity to play 8 more years in the NHL.
I really appreciate you sharing that. That's pretty powerful stuff. And I think a lot of people out there are battling different things, whether it's alcohol or there's a lot of different ones out there.
Totally.
I don't like to go into the dark or the darkness that was part in there, but I think for a lot of people, they probably didn't realize how alcohol had taken hold of you. What was the lowest point of your drink? Like, was it was that bad?
Well, for me, my drinking, it wasn't like I woke up every day and I needed a drink. I was more of a binge drinker. When, it all started back in my early teens, right? Because my parents were alcoholics. So, the first time I ever try to drink, I was probably 11, 12 years old, and I thought it was the greatest thing, right? And so into my teenage years, I just took a liking to it quite a bit, right? It kind of goes hand in hand with playing hockey and all that, and trying to fit in with your teammates and the older teammates and so on. But and then at 19 years old, my brother, being 3 years older than me, always growing up, took me under his wing and looked after me. And but like I mentioned earlier, we used alcohol to bond with each other and to hang out and to kind of forget about the outside world of how we grew up and whatnot, and we were each other's backbone. And playing junior hockey with my brother for a year in 98, 99, living together in our Billets family, we drank every time we got the green light, and it was full throttle. And I'm sure a lot of guys can relate. When you get a green light on a Saturday night and you got Sunday off, it's we go hard, or it's pop the cap off the bottle and you drink it until she's done. But that all led into my professional career. Well, fuck, I'm 20 years old. I'm living on my own.
Yeah.
I don't have, billet parents to tell me, what time dinner is.
Now you got money in your pocket.
And I got money in my pocket, and, I'm single. And
well, and you're a fan favorite. The style of hockey you played. I mean, we were talking about it before we started. Well, I think maybe we were at the start is the World Juniors when you came out and were absolutely crushing people. It was awesome, man.
Yeah, I think that tournament was what put me on the map. But prior to that, like I talked about, Mr. Kelly McCrimmon, playing in Brandon, I was the leading goal scorer of the WHL. I was the leading penalty minutes guy. I was basically
how big are you?
5'8" and a half. In the program, I'm 5'9".
But you walk around like you're 6'4". Like, it's awesome.
But my junior days, I started to become cocky. My 18, 19-year-old year, because I was like, okay, I'm leading my team. I'm doing everything. I'm doing my job. But yet my off-ice antics, I started noticing, my teammates not wanting to hang out with me because, Tuesday evening or whatever, I pick up a case of beer and,
Yeah, you're taking a whole new meaning of playing guilty. Like you're
exactly. And hey, hockey guys out there, you guys know what guilty hockey is.
Yeah.
I played guilty hockey for, 10, 12 years, my junior career into my professional career.
How good did you feel once you were sober then? Like, I mean, you mentioned that it was tough, but like, how good did you feel your body? Because I mean, you take, when we were having Casey, I think it was like 41 days. I like having stints where you just cold turkey go for a little bit. Yep. I enjoy a good beer though, or a good scotch.
Yeah.
But it took about 41 days, and like it's only like day 3, man. You're like, whoa.
Oh yeah, no,
wow, fantastic.
Well, it's a different life, right? Like it's you. I like for me when I sobered up, it was probably a year or two into sobriety where I started having clarity, thinking with a clear mind and, doing things with a purpose. When I was abusing alcohol playing in the NHL, my role was a fourth line player, 5 to 7 minutes a night, getting a couple tilts, do your job. And, that's how I became, basically a fan favorite in Nashville. But I use my popularity as a tool to oversee, my off-ice antics. I'd go out party on a Wednesday night. I knew for a fact that coaches, Nashville isn't a big city. They knew, where I was and partying, because I'd show up, Tuesday or Thursday smelling like booze or whatever, and take Thursday off and play Friday and, dominate, fight a couple times, and we'd win. And I'd be like, fuck, I did my job, guys. Like, what are you going to do about it now? Right? Like, so I used that for many years. And then I started playing more minutes. Well, when you're not looking after your body, it shows on the ice. And so, third period come along and Trotzy would just sit me because he knew I was gas and I couldn't handle it. And, being called into the office too, so you got to look after yourself more. You're playing more minutes. We need you. I'd make packs to my teammates. Okay, guys, I'm going to lay off, I'm going to hang low. Well, the next day off, night off or whatever, is right back at it. And so, my teammates started kind of veering away from hanging out with me. And now I was seeing this at a professional level, right? Where, the normal thing to do was to go out for a few beers after a game. And, I'd ask my teammates, hey, where are you going? Oh, I'm not going out tonight. And, then eventually I was hanging out with people away from the game because my teammates didn't want to be partying with me till 3, 4, 5 in the morning, right? Guys have families and stuff. And so when I sobered up, it was, probably 2 years into, playing hockey with a purpose, knowing my role. And that adjustment was, I think it was a time in my professional career where I was like, wow, now I own what I do and I take ownership. No one else is going to tell me how to play hockey or what to do. Now I was taking ownership in playing my role to the best of my ability. My minutes started to go up. My opportunities were, coming towards me, and I was like starting to feel comfortable with this new life. And like I said, it gave me 8 more years of playing in the NHL.
Bred a little bit of confidence.
Yes, absolutely. And, for everyone, it's different, building that confidence. But for me, everyone hits their rock bottom in different ways. My rock bottom was, if I don't end this substance abuse now, I'm going to be in the same boat as my brother, 6 feet under, and that's not what he wanted for me. And yeah, here I am today with a beautiful wife, Jennifer. We have 2 very healthy young girls, and it's been a blessing for me, and to see life from a different perspective has been pretty amazing.
You got a very unique story, and it's super cool to sit across from you. Just checking the time, it is 20 after 4, so I assume we should move it along. I know you got people coming, so why don't we go into the final 5? I gotta say, I really enjoyed this.
We can go on for hours here, but in retirement, I have a lot of daddy duties on my hand. I'm sure but hey, it's all good.
No,
we don't hear anyone screaming and yelling yet, so we're good. We're good.
Well, you know what we do? We get you on for part 2, and we'll beat spit and chicklets to it. That's what we'll do. But let's go into the final 5. They're just five questions, long or short as you want to go. And shout out to Heath and Tracy McDonald from Crude Master. They've been supporters of the podcast since the very beginning. So my first one, and I love doing this one because everybody's got a different take on it. But if you could do this, so you could sit across from one person to pick their brain, who's the guy and what's the question you'd ask?
For me, it would probably be sitting down with Stan Jonathan. The guy is an ex-NHL Indigenous player, Boston Bruins, And the one question I would ask him probably is, what got you out of your community? What drove you as an Indigenous person? You know, because you got to remember, back in that era, in the 70s, 60s and 70s, you know, for Indigenous people, it was a pretty tough life, right? You know, talking about residential schools and, but yeah, Stan Jonathan, you know, would probably be my guy.
That's an interesting pick. That would be.
I've met him a few times, briefly chatted, but I wish I had more than 5-10 minutes with him.
Yeah, well, it's one of the interesting things about doing this is if you just listen. I mean, it's cool to sit and hear guys' perspective and their stories, and it's one of the reasons I love doing this. It's so much fun, and I get to learn the entire time. Right? It's fantastic.
Yeah. The more I think of that question, the more people come to mind. You know, for me, interviewing our elders in our communities, interviewing people who have been through the meat grinders and have experienced hardships, and you know what's led them to be successful and to fight through you know that adversity that me and you have never experienced, right? You know, we think some days are harder than others today, but God, there's no comparison to what our grandparents went through, their parents, you know, and so on. So just talking to older individuals who have experience
and perspective and everything else.
Yeah, and just listening to them, right? Like that's. People who listen to the podcast already know this, but I started working with the Lloydminster Archives, and so I get to go around the area and interview people who are roughly between 70 and 90, let's call it, and talk to them about their lives, and it's amazing.
Absolutely eye-opening.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, like it's just, well, it's a look into a different time and a different world because it's changed so much.
Oh, totally. And for our, especially the Inuit culture, you know, surviving in those kind of conditions, right? Like, you know, you know, every time I go home or to other remote communities, one of the first things I try and do is to connect with our elders, connect with, you know, especially when I do my public speaking on reserves and stuff, I always make sure I spend time with the elders because it shows to the younger generation that although times have changed, to never forget what our grandparents went through and to
our heritage
and to, you know, to connect with them that way, to help them heal from what they've been through and to conversate about life and to learn, right? Like just sit there and listen to them talk is just amazing.
If you could pick, we'll go to a hockey question. If you could pick any two line mates to hop on a line with you, who would you take?
Oh boy. I would love to play with Gino Ojic, another Indigenous icon in the hockey world.
Yeah.
And oh man, I'd be on the right wing. Gino would be left, and big old tough guy. What's his name there? Looked after Wayne Gretzky.
McSorley?
Nope.
Oh God, this is terrible.
Come on. Dave
Semenko.
Yes. I mean, God, imagine me being that little pest with these two heavyweights.
Nobody would mess with you. Nobody would mess with you.
Yeah. I was pretty fortunate, though. When I played in Nashville, I always had 2 or 3 heavyweights on the team. You know, Brian McGrattan, Wade, the late Wade Belak, Jim McKenzie, Jamie Allison, Brendan Witt. You know, the list just goes on. So I always was able to do my job playing hockey because I knew, you know, I had 2 big
some
heavyweights.
backup,
Yeah.
some heavy backup. If you were traded to, you know, you're playing for Nashville and you're getting traded to wherever, doesn't matter. If you could bring one guy with you, one of your teammates along the road, it doesn't have to be on Nashville. It could be any of the teams you played, and you were going to get traded. If there was one guy you're like, that guy's coming with me, who would you bring along?
Scotty Upshaw.
Scotty Upshaw.
Scotty Upshaw. Yeah, me and Uppy go way back to our early teens, and we've been like brothers. You know, fortunately, we were drafted to Nashville. Prior to being drafted, you know, we were good buddies. He played in Kamloops, I played in Brandon, whatever, you know, but throughout our whole junior career, we were tight. And then we got drafted to Nashville. We played with each other, and still to this day, we're as tight as any bros out there could be. So Scotty Upshaw would be my wingman.
If you, and this actually could be multiple. Did you have a mentor? You know, you've mentioned your father a lot. You mentioned in Nashville, Barry Trotz and Poyle and guys like that. Did you have one guy that sticks out that kind of mentored you? Was it a tough guy? You know, you talk about the big guys protecting you and that kind of thing. Was there one guy who kind of showed you the ropes or taught you a good lesson along the way?
Yes, my brother Terrence. He was my hero. He was my mentor. He guided me. You know, he was 3 years older than me, so he was the one that gave me strength every day to basically live to fight another day. You know, whatever situation you're in, to just put your head down and then grind away. And yeah, I mean, to be along his side for 19 years of my life. Still to this day, I instill a lot of his teachings, you know, not only with myself, but with my kids, and to show them that, you know, it's all about mind over matter, right? When you think times are tough, just think about what our elders went through. Think about what our parents have been through. Mind over matter. So my late brother Terrence is, he gave me inspiration to live life every day to the fullest, and to, you know, keep his legacy on through my passion of working in the Indigenous communities, and to be a role model for our people, and to show them that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And you know, we all fight a fight no one knows about. So, and you know, for my brother, I didn't know he was hurting that much to go down that path and take his own life, because we never talked about it. You know, for me now, it's about being open and honest. You know, it's one of the reasons why I wrote my book, to help me heal as an individual through the experiences that I've gone through, to put pen to paper and to relive those moments, and you know, turn the page and to move on. So he's been my inspiration every day.
One final one. What is, coming from the Great White North, the true Great White North, what was one luxury, though, when you came down here, you're like, oh, thanks, sweet Jesus, this is beautiful?
Well, Winnipeg was the closest big city. So
okay.
It's a 3-hour flight from my hometown. And I remember this pizza place called Gondola Pizza. Thin crust. It was... I mean, we couldn't wait as soon as we landed, got to our hotel room, the first thing we ordered was gondola pizza. Yeah, that was it. And still to this day, even when we go play the Jets, get to my hotel room, order gondola pizza. Yeah, pretty simple, but
No, there's nothing like that. There's
yeah,
the simple things in life.
exactly.
Well, thank you, sir, for carving a little bit of time out for me. I really do appreciate this. It's, been a true honor to sit across from you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Anytime. Round 2, let me know. We'll get into some real good stories. Hunting stories, fishing. I'm sure a lot of you hockey guys out there want to hear more hockey stories, but yeah, time's up, I think.
Well, I tell you what, that's now I'm going to so this will come out here in the next couple of weeks, and we all know what's going to happen. My phone's going to go like this, ding, 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 ding. Cool. Well, thanks again.
Right on, Sean. Anytime.
Hey, folks, thanks again for joining us today. If you just stumbled on the show and like what you hear, please click subscribe. Remember, every Monday and Wednesday, a new guest will be sitting down to share their story. The Sean Newman Podcast is available for free on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever else you find your podcast fix. Until next time.